Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Diehl. I'm currently the president of the Interreligious Council of Linn County. On this morning's show, we're going to be talking about the rise of anti-Semitism here in the United States. And here to discuss this very, very important topic, I have two of our local rabbis, Rabbi Esther and Rabbi Todd. And before we jump into this topic, I'd like each of you to introduce yourself and why this particular topic is important to you. So Rabbi Esther, do you want to get us started?
There you go. Everyone's waiting for everyone else to start, which is very
That's
polite.
Right.
I'm Rabbi Esther Hugenholtz. I am the rabbi of the Agudas Achim congregation in Iowa City/Coralville. I have been a rabbi with this particular community for almost 6 years and have really enjoyed living my local life in the Hawkeye State. This issue is important because it is close to home, and I think it impacts our Jewish communities in ways that people might expect, but also ways that people might not expect. And I think it's always more important to emphasize the things that bond us rather than things that divide us.
So well said. Thank you, Rabbi Esther. I'm Rabbi Todd Thalblum, Temple Judah in Cedar Rapids, and I've been living in Iowa now at the congregation for 13 years. Grew up in the Midwest, though, so it really does feel like home. It felt like home all right away. And I don't think I have anything that disagrees with what Rabbi Esther just said. Anti-Semitism is clearly an issue that continues to show itself. It's been around historically for thousands of years. It tends to, or it seems like it gets lessened for a while, and then something will happen and it pops back up. And unfortunately, we're at a period right now where there seems to be more of it in the United States. And it's very concerning to me as a rabbi and a Jew, and to the members of my congregation.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, right before the show, we were talking, and one of our producers, reminded me that Rabbi Esther, you were on an episode of Ethical Perspectives on the News just a few years ago, discussing this very topic, and that's sad, right? That's unfortunate, and so. We want to talk about it. We want to address it. We want to see what we can do to obviously reduce it. But I do want to spend a good portion of this discussion really talking about kind of the positive aspects of Judaism, and all the good that comes from our Jewish community, and really be kind of forward facing here. But I do want to start out just by kind of framing the discussion. And when we talk about anti-Semitism, what are we referring to? And so the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance defines anti-Semitism in the following way. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. So, we've certainly had, recent examples of that. Probably the most notable is October of 2018, when a man opened fire at the Tree of Life congregation in Pittsburgh, killing 11 people. And that's probably when, Rabbi Esther, you were last on to kind of discuss that. But here we are again, fortunately not in the light of any sort of mass shooting like that, but certainly it's become, there's something in the air with it, and you're hearing it a lot. And so we want to make sure we're addressing that and putting to bed some of these notions. So I'd like each of you to kind of jump in on why you think we continue to have to discuss it, why it's in our kind of conversation these days. So either one of you can kind of address that, and we'll get into it.
You want to start?
I was hoping to pass the baton to you.
I will. Well, so
you can interrupt her if she
clearly it's been in the news lately. There's been some, high profile people who have made not only anti-Semitic comments specifically, and also tweeted links to an anti-Semitic movie. And those are all very problematic. And when it comes from celebrities or people with real followings, then it gets amplified across a lot more people. And so it becomes more of an issue that we really need to deal with. And I think that's part of the problem. I also think one of the reasons that we've seen more of it in the last 4 to 6 years really is unfortunately it's being used for political gain in some ways. And that's been very disturbing for me that it used to be, especially politicians or people in real power wouldn't express it, would keep it quiet, would condemn it very quickly if there was any sort of hint of it. And unfortunately, with the last president who really did use it, or at least courted white supremacists in some ways for his own political gain and wouldn't condemn the rhetoric that was being spouted, it has normalized it in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime in the United States. And that's been of concern.
Yeah, and I will tag along with that, anti-Semitism has historically always functioned as the world's oldest conspiracy theory. Anti-Semitism is an illusionary model to try and explain how power works in the world by basically punching up and punching down at the Jewish population at once. And I think it's important to understand its function, because once you understand its function, you understand how it's being used with, in the ways that Rabbi Todd just described. So in a time of increased polarization where conspiracy theories in general are carrying more currency, it is no surprise that anti-Semitism is the kind of conspiracy theory that is also gaining more traction. And I don't think civil society and political leaders have done some political leaders have done a sufficiently good job of condemning and decrying it, which of course fosters it. But really understanding anti-Semitism as a conspiracy theory, it's not based in any fact. It's not based in any observable aspects of the Jewish community and the Jewish people, helps us understand, because it basically is a way of deflecting responsibility from other sources of power in our society and placing the blame at the feet of Jewish people. And once you understand that and you understand how it functions, then it's also easier for all of us who might be carrying some of those ideas or tropes in our heads unconsciously to address it and say, wait a minute, let me critically evaluate. Let me stop and think for a minute. Is this really true, what I believe about Jewish people? And of course, you can extend that to any minority in this society. But, focusing specifically in this case on the question of anti-Semitism, does this really check out with what I understand about Judaism? How can I find out more about Judaism so that I can be well informed?
Right. And I would add to that it's not just the polarization, although that certainly adds to what's happening lately, but also whenever there's times of real distress, something's going wrong really in the world, that this anti-Semitic trope sometimes pops up where people can blame something other than what's really going on. And so not just the political polarization, but I think COVID was such a out of the blue changed all the way that we dealt with each other in society. People had big conspiracy theories about where that started and what was happening, and it added to people's distress. And unfortunately, fingers start getting pointed at minorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, of course, the most recent example is, Kanye West and his platform and some of the comments that he made. And, I love the point that you made there, Rabbi Esther, around, there is this currency of conspiracy theories, and we've kind of tackled the different ones on this program over the years. There seems to be this common thread of like, oh, there's this tiny little grain of truth in what I'm saying, and so therefore, if you call me out on it, I just kind of run to that. But you really truly you don't appreciate all the actual damage that you're doing. And so I do think it's very, very important to make sure we're calling people on their BS, right, when they start saying these things, and not let it grow. And because to your point, anti-Semitism has been around for thousands of years, and surprising how many people don't necessarily appreciate that, right? Some people, it's like, well, 1941, to present is when it happened.
No.
I don't know if either one of you want to talk a little bit about the history of anti-Semitism here for the next few minutes, kind of let our audience know kind of over the centuries, if not millennia, what the history of anti-Semitism has looked like.
So
go ahead, Esther.
You have to divide the history of anti-Semitism into two main parts. There is religiously inspired Jew hatred or anti-Jewish hatred that has manifested itself throughout the Middle Ages and earlier times as well, already in the Roman era, but definitely throughout the Middle Ages. And that was geared towards the charge, between the different competing truth claims of Christianity and Judaism, and that early Christianity blamed the Jewish community for the crucifixion of Christ, for instance, right? And that kind of anti-Judaism filtered through. What you see later in the 19th century with the development of colonialism and pseudo-scientific race theories, that anti-Judaism morphs into anti-Semitism, where it becomes a racial category, even though Jews are not a race. We are a multi-ethnic, internally diverse, open Jewish global community. People can convert to Judaism, people can leave Judaism. We're not a race, right? But it was racialized in those terms by ascribing false racial properties to Jews. And that is the anti-Semitism that later would start forming the basis of Nazi anti-Semitism that we know all too well, of course, from the Second World War and the Holocaust. So it's important to distinguish the nuances between the different anti-Semitisms, but they all share a common trait, that they are about otherizing, dehumanizing, and harming the Jewish community.
Right. Right. Historically, and Esther is right on. I would, there were big events that were very anti-Semitic that, even if we think of the Holocaust as one of the most horrific and most recent, the Crusades were, a version of anti-Semitism for sure, even though they were directed more at Islam, at least for the end game. Jews were swept up in that whole, in the Crusades, and regularly tortured and killed and forced to convert or not accepted. The expulsions from Spain in 1492 was also one of those pieces of anti-Semitism that's been around forever. And so not just the idea of, Jesus's crucifixion, which, just to be clear, really was not the Jews, it was the Romans. But anti-Semitism has a very long historical timeline.
Just the impact of dealing with these anti-Semitic tropes, anti-Semitic events, violent or otherwise, on your local community. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit on that, and just kind of the overall exhaustion that you feel there? And Todd, certainly feel free to convey your own experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I became the rabbi of Agudas Achim congregation in Coralville in 2017. I had a rabbinic career over in Europe, and then I came to the United States. And I kind of hit the road running as an enthusiastic new rabbi, and we were brainstorming ideas to put solar panels on our roof, because we have a fairly new building with a large kind of footprint on our roof. And we thought, well, how cool and in line with Jewish values would it be if we went carbon neutral, or tried to go carbon neutral, with these solar panels on the roof? And of course, there's subsidies, but it's an expense and it's a big project. So we started investigating the viability of that project when the Pittsburgh massacre happened in October 2018. And that just sucked all of the oxygen out of the room, because we were forced to pivot. Instead of doing something environmentally friendly that reflects our value, responsible stewards of the earth and being part of the world, we had to pivot to hardening our facility and leveraging our emotional, practical, financial, and spiritual resources to keeping ourselves safe. So we hardened the facility. I'm not going to go into details how we did that for obvious reasons, but we did upgrade our security system and our facility in order to protect ourselves, which costs a lot of money. And this is what happens with the victims of bigotry. We are the ones bearing that burden. We are the ones who have to do all of the explaining. We are the ones who have to do all of the educating. And it's exhausting. I would much rather talk about all the things that I think are awesome about Judaism and that my non-Jewish neighbors and friends can share in than talk about, people's delusional bigotries with which they target us. Another example is, just the kind of conversations we need to have with our children in our religious school, but also my own children. I have 3 children, and having to explain to them what was happening, especially after more recently there was neo-Nazi leafleting in the area surrounding the synagogue, including my street. And I had to explain to my kids what that meant. We are not afraid. I've not had any bad experiences directly in Iowa, but we are mindful and we are resilient. But that resiliency takes energy, again, that I would much rather put in building strong interfaith relationships, being part of our society, helping lift people up, making their lives better, teaching Jewish values and spirituality. That's the work I really want to be doing, not talking about this stuff, right? So it's like this constant drain on your emotional and spiritual and actual resources that takes a lot out of Jewish leaders and also, Jewish laity who constantly have to code switch and they constantly have to adjust and they're constantly bearing this trauma. About 40% of American Jews are changing their behavior about carrying their Judaism out in the public sphere. The American Jewish Committee just released an anti-Semitism report with a number of these takeaways, right? So some people may choose not to wear this. I don't know if you can see it. It's my little Star of David, right? They may choose not to wear this. They may choose not to wear a yarmulke. I do choose to wear those things out publicly. That's my choice. But Jews are scared and they are reevaluating, in many cases, their relationship to this country. And there's something insidious about the slow grind of that fear and that worry and concern that is very bad for minorities, including Jewish minorities and other minorities that experience similar things. So it does take the oxygen out of the room, and we would much rather be doing other things.
Yes, thank you so much, Todd.
I'm not sure I have much that I can add to that. It was wonderfully said about how we have to, do things to protect ourselves instead of doing what our mission really is as rabbis and communities. One of the things that occurs to me though in the conversation is, anti-Semitism never stops with just the Jews. The same people that irrationally hate Jews for whatever reason are just as likely to be racist and have issues with African Americans or other Black people or other minority groups. That in many ways the Jews the Jews turn out to be canaries in the same kind of in that coal mine where it will start by pointing fingers at the Jews for this, but it doesn't stop there, and that's what history has shown. So it really is. It's a threat to our entire society, not just the Jews who live in our society. Which was at least one of the things that I thought was encouraging about the AJC report that just came out, was that Americans on the whole recognize that anti-Semitism is not only out there and prevalent, but is a problem for society as a whole and not just one group of people that live in society.
So
I want to say a big amen to that, right? And that's
Right.
why also understanding its function as a conspiracy theory is important, because in the anti-Semitic worldview, Jews are seen as the animating force for other minority groups that far-right nationalists, neo-Nazis, etc. hate, right? So it's all interconnected and all of our faiths are linked. We stand in solidarity with the Muslim community. We stand in solidarity with the Black community and the BIPOC community. We stand in solidarity with the LGBTQ community. We stand in solidarity with other vulnerable communities that I haven't named specifically, because anti-Semitism is an outflow of a worldview that sorts people into deserving and undeserving, worthy and unworthy. And, Jewish monotheism gave a great gift to the world, where the message of our God and the message of our Torah in Genesis 1:27 is that human beings are all made in the image of God. Now, we take that kind of for granted, but in the ancient world, that was a really radical notion. And we affirm the fundamental equality and dignity and worth of every human being on this planet. And that is the truth that anti-Semites try to silence, and we will not let them.
Yeah, I mean, there's, with fighting bad ideas with good ideas, right? Conspiracy theories with good theories, right? Theories grounded in
conspiracy
reality.
Theories with truth, right?
With truth,
One
there
of the
you
ways that you have to fight it by at least, disseminating truth, by making sure that this is false, or this is not factual. This is what reality is. And so many ways we've lost a little bit of our connection to what's real in the world.
Yeah. So how do we best fight back against anti-Semitism? And I don't know if we've already kind of touched on a few things here, but what are some tangible ways that we can really push back against these kind of conspiracy theories, notions, again, the typical stereotypes and tropes that are out there? How should we think about that?
Yeah, I think I have two responses, kind of a collective response and an individual response, right? So the collective response is, things like education. There are astounding facts, like, a lot of Americans think that the Jewish population in the United States is 30%. That 30% of all Americans are Jews. Well, part of me as a rabbi thinks, I wish, that would be awesome.
That's right.
But it's only 2%. We're only 2% of the American population, and only 0.2% of the global population, of the world population, right? So, like, facts around how the Holocaust happened, facts around who Jews really are, facts around how we define what a Jew is, and this is not some mysterious, inaccessible thing. For instance, facts about how synagogues work, how Jewish community works, how our rituals work. So part of it is like education, right? And there's things that Jewish institutions can do, and there's things that non-Jewish institutions can do, and what schools can do and churches can do, and everyone can get in on that, right? I think the second part for me, which is my charge to the audience, to all of you watching at home, is the individual charge. Just be curious. Be curious about us. Go to www.mygewishlearning.com, mygewishlearning.com, for excellent information about Judaism. We are friendly. We are open. You can come to a synagogue. You can, ask a local rabbi questions. You can join in interfaith activities through your own house of worship. Just be curious and see that we're normal human beings with a very beautiful and ancient culture and some slightly confusing dietary practices to poor-looking Iowans. But just be curious about us and don't be afraid, because we really are much friendlier than people give us credit for. And the fact that I'm saying it slightly aggressively doesn't make it any less true.
Well, I can attest to Todd being a very nice person. I've known Todd for 7 years now, and been able to participate in multiple events at the Temple Judah here in Cedar Rapids, and it's just been wonderful and really enriching as a non-Jew to understand and appreciate all the wonderful traditions within the Jewish faith. It's something that's been inspiring in my own life, and I say that honestly and authentically. But Todd, do you want to add? We have about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Yeah, the one thing that I would add to Esther's wonderful suggestions there is it needs to be called out, and not by Jews. Everybody expects the rabbis and the Jews to call out anti-Semitism when we see it, and we will continue to do that. But people learn better and hear better when it's their own people talking to them. Right. So churches need to call it out when they see it as anti-Semitic and teach their own members, the African-American community, when it's happening within their community need to be willing to call it out and say it for what it is. When I, teach very liberal values and support LGBTQ issues and events, it means more to my community because you're hearing it from me, not from that particular community. And so I think that one of the best ways to fight it is for, all of us who really stand up for truth and equality and fairness to call out when we see it, when that's not happening, when there is false information being peddled. That everybody needs to be willing to say, this isn't true, but here's where you can find the truth, or this is the truth. And it's not, I love that she gave the My Jewish Learning website. That's a great site. You can go also to the reformjudaism.org, which is my movement's website that also gives out great information. Don't believe what people are putting out there on Facebook or on Twitter or, on all the other social media sites, because that's not the best place to get your information. Be critical and go looking for verification and look for other answers than what's just being put out there.
Love it. Todd, go ahead.
I would add to that, we are, even in the United States, we're a really diverse community. Not every Jew looks like me. Not every Jew looks like Todd. Sorry, Todd.
Okay.
1 in 10 Jews are people of color, right? So we have a huge contingent of Black Jews. We have a huge contingent of LGBTQ Jews, of Jews who aren't of European Ashkenazi descent. So just be curious about our community. We're very diverse. We're a lot of fun. We've got good food. We've got pretty good music. Allow yourself to be curious and unafraid, and do all of those, all of those things that Todd described in terms of finding reputable information, reaching out to your local Jewish community, and just stay curious and just see us for the human beings that we are.
Yeah, I love it. Todd, we have, do you want to say something quickly about the Holocaust service coming up?
Oh, well, sure. First of all, Cedar Rapids has been a really wonderful community, and I understand that it's sad that there was the literature that was found out near Agudas Achim just a few months ago. Thankfully, Cedar Rapids has always been incredibly welcoming to the community here, especially for the whole time that I've been here. And one of the things that we do is sponsor a Holocaust remembrance service that the Interreligious Council supports and gets behind, and members of the council participate in and give readings, not just for remembering the Holocaust, but other genocides that go on. This year's Holocaust service is at the end of March. We'll be bringing in a special speaker whose name, of course, is eluding me at the moment. I think it's Sunday night, the March 27th, and everybody is, of course, invited. It'll be at Co-College this year.
Wonderful. And Rabbi Esther, we have just about 30 seconds left. Do you want to highlight some of the great activities your local congregation has coming up, or anything else you'd like to say in closing?
Like Todd, Iowa City /Coralville has been really welcoming. And after the neo-Nazi leafleting event, we got a lot of messages of support, including from the mayor. And I feel really safe. I walk around with this all the time, all about town. So I echo what Todd is saying, that this is a very welcoming and lovely community. We have an Introduction to Judaism program that's coming up in the spring. We always have activities at the synagogue. We have a contact form. So if you Google Synagogue Coralville, you'll hit us, and don't be a stranger.
Oh, wonderful. Well, this has been a great conversation that has exceeded my expectations. So thank you both for a great conversation this morning. Thank you, the listener and viewer, for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care now. Bye.